discussing Ayanamsha now, and this is the question of Ayanamsha. Basically, for those who don't know what Ayanamsha is the difference between tropical and sidereal zodiacs. And the question is that as many people you talk to, that many Ayanamshas are there. So that means it is all people discussing and adding, and some research they do and they add and they put their name to it, and there is a Ayanamsha. So for beginner students, it is a problem. And many years ago in India, after independence, because there were a lot of different panchangas, that they used to have different Ayanamshas, that the government of India decided to have one kind of not totally acceptable Ayanamsha, which was set on Chitra Paksha Ayanamsha. And so most people tended to use that. It is also popularly known as Lahiri Ayanamsha. But most scholars and things, they do a little bit tweaking of that Ayanamsha. But if you are a new person, and especially if you have a software, and we have a software guru with us, so he will answer this in a minute. But you find that you have so many choices, so people tend to use the one that appeals to them most. Especially newcomers, I find this all the time. They say, oh, you must look at my chart with this Ayanamsha only, because that's where I look good. So that is not necessarily the correct way to do it. So we are going to ask our two great scholars here who are there. So Sanjay, please say what...
When we talk of Aynamsha, my first question would be, what Aynamsha did the rishis use? Mm-hmm. Of course, at that time there was no B.V. Raman Ayanamsha, there was no Yukteshwar Ayanamsha. We are talking about the rishis, and this is Vedic astrology which comes from the rishis. So of course they used what is called a fixed star to get the starting point of the zodiac. It's called Chitra Paksha because the nakshatra Chitra goes from 6 degrees 40 minutes minus of Virgo to 6 degrees 40 minutes plus of Libra. So the central point of Chitra, exactly 180 degrees opposite that, is the starting point of the zodiac. So we need a yogatara or a fixed star in Chitra Nakshatra to define the starting point of the zodiac. Now, what happens is, the best way to do this is to observe that star every day night. That would be perfect. So every day we have the exact Aynamsha. And then if we can put that into our calculations, we will have the exact Chitra Paksha Aynamsha. So since it is very technical and it is Chitra Paksha, Paksha means 180 degrees. So therefore that would be the correct Chitra Paksha, naturally observed Aynamsha. But instead of that, what for convenience, people develop mathematical equations to be able to predict the Aynamsha. And that's where the calculation does work, because it's end of the day, it's an interpolation. It does work for some time, for 40 years, 50 years, and then it goes haywires. So a correct thing would be to observe it, and that is the real Chitra Paksha Aynamsha. And then you find that Lahiri Aynamsha was good and was valid in 1947 or 48 or 50. 50 years down the line, it starts going slightly odd. You see, Aynamshas don't last for more than 50 years. Most of these calculations don't last for more than that, because they're approximations. That is the problem with any Aynamsha.
But the modern astronomy has developed so that we can very exactly calculate the position of any star. So if you use the modern astronomical algorithms, you can know exactly where Chitra is called speaker is positioned. So like in my software, you just select the Chitra Paksha Aynamsha. It works out where the star is if you observed it today, and uses that for the Aynamsha calculation. Now what I've observed in India is that basically there are the astrologers who use that position, and they have there's a bunch of Aynamshas which are based on various approximate positions of speaker. So why not take the exact position? Then there are other people who say, no, this is at the middle of, it's the middle of Chitra Nakshatra between, as you said, Virgo and Libra, but the zodiac is starting on the opposite side. So we should really find a star on the opposite side. But when you look on the opposite side of speaker, there is no star. So they take some star close to that, say at the end of Pisces, and so there's a whole set of ayanamshas based on that. But you see, the point is that when you study the Vedic literature, the Vedic science, everything in Vedic science goes from 0 to full. It's like the new moon, there's no moon. Full moon, there's just total moon. The Rig Veda has a fullness, and then there's a progression to a point where the Pandit doesn't even repeat anything. There's a moment of silence. That represents the 0 point of the circle, mandala they say, circle. So it has to be that wherever your speaker is the brightest star that's close to the zodiac. So it must be that the opposite side has nothing. It's the unmanifest. It's what we call Shiva. While a speaker represents what we call Shakti. And when you study the nakshatras and everything, you find that they're all focused on these 2 points. So the fact that there is no star at the beginning of Aries is not a kind of mistake. It's the genius of nature. So we don't need to try and find a star over there. We fix it on the Shakti. We don't have to try and find a symbol of Shiva. He's the unmanifest over there. We fix it on the Shakti because after all the Shakti is said to be the source of everything. The manifest is coming from the Shakti. So this is the philosophy behind the use of the Chitrapaksha.
And I think one last word I wanted to say on this, on choosing the Ayanamsha for yourself. This is where the guru is important. And the software guru is there because you get so much choice. But then which one to use, you have to look for the guidance of your teacher and then the guidance of knowledge. That is why we can't just decide that we have all these choices and we are going to make one.
But now Sri Jyoti Star does have that. Our biggest problem was we never had this advantage in the software where this speaker was exactly calculated, and he has now incorporated that in the software. So we no longer have to beat about the bush and take approximations. Andrew has actually, we have the exact Chitrapaksha Aynamsha. So why not use that? That is what the rishis used. Frankly, the debate is over. People are not willing to accept it.
Yeah, but that is life.